Hey.
We had
Yeah, Captain, how are you?
good. Yourself?
Good. Good.
Guys?
You're welcome, Jason. And Jason and Gail, everybody get food. There's plenty.
Here. Hey.
How are you? And there's plenty. If you guys are hungry, go get more.
What was? Or,
Yeah. Thursday. So we can't even drive out of the station.
Supposed to be digging this week,
Because they.
so I'm excited.
So
Once you start digging.
I gave us out. Then it's almost done.
wow.
Yeah, then we're like 2
And
weeks
then
away.
you figure, you don't get a ride and truck to get to where you
How about you guys? Are you planning?
everything I know.
I'm assuming that they have this.
That's where we need them.
Yeah.
But the stations are.
Right. But you have one somewhere else.
Yeah.
More time.
Yeah. It's down by there.
That's a nice. That turned out.
Right.
Mr. President,
Right. Yeah,
You more chips.
that's how I felt. Like I was pressure.
We're not gonna go letter.
Like just embrace the, yeah, like quit trying to.
I'll send it. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Josh,
Here.
Tyler,
Here.
Alex is absent, Jeff,
Yes.
and Andrew.
Yes. Do I have approval of the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Jeff and Tyler. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda passed. We will jump right into our work session with CMBA to discuss our facility master planning. Do you guys want to present first? Or do you want to jump in the?
Well, we have
enrollment first?
John's online.
Okay, perfect.
He can present his.
Yep.
And then we will follow up with that, that's okay.
Perfect. John, are you there?
Yeah, you want me to get started?
Oh, yep, you can jump right into your presentation.
All right. Share this one. Can you guys see what you're looking at here?
Mhm.
The opening slide. Okay, great. So yeah, let's get into the piece that I usually show right at the beginning, which is the 10-year forecast, where you're seeing some leveling off from what you've had. You had some a pretty nice bump last year, and then some leveling off, and then a gentle increase, which may be surprising that it's not increasing more in the first year, but we'll get into why I think that is and where it's located, where those what's causing those changes. I do try to provide every time a comparison to prior forecasts. I actually took this one out a little further to 2040. And we're seeing where, so say the 2017 forecast of 2023 was 1566 and it turned out at 1629. So it's just as a benchmark to see how wildly inaccurate some of them are, and some of the variability, and just get a sense of where we've come from. This one we're seeing, but you can also see the changes, say, in the out years. So this would be 8 years out, right, or 7 years out, and this would be another 5, so 12 years out. And you can see it's hovered right around that 2000 mark. It's a little lower now. Invariably, when I've done these things, they do tend to, the estimates at least, tend to converge towards something in the 2000 to 2200 when you get out, 15, 20 years. It's a question of just what year you get there. And you'll see some of that in how this plays out. So here's the forecast from 24 to 33 by age. We added the pre-K this time, as that's become pretty ubiquitous, and you guys started before it really was. So doing these things. So I decided it's probably time to make a change and get those in there. And you're seeing fairly flat for the next few years to down a little bit, and then it starts to grow. A lot of that is this forecast includes the 2020 census. So we hadn't had an update since the 19 estimates, but even those were fundamentally based on the 2010 census. The long range forecasts haven't changed very much, but there was a blip of, I can't remember, 15 kids or so that we were expected a surge in 1 year. And it was, say, 2016, 2017, where they thought that had occurred and it hadn't. And so they're still expecting it. It's just pushed off a couple of years. And that's why you'll see this start to bump out up here in the next 8 to 10 years rather than immediately. We did see a surge in pre-K in 2023, which is probably a function of holding back kids from the pandemic years. And that's what we're attributing it to. It is otherwise wholly inexplicable. It's out of scale with the number of kids who are available to go to school. And so that's something that you get, that's a one-time bump that you move through the system as you age, but that we're not expecting that in future years. So we're expecting a return to more of a normal 60% of the kids who are available to go to preschool go. And so what's going on here and why you were seeing the original flatness is just a process of getting these grades. So these grades in here, so these 4 cohorts that are smaller class sizes. And it's just a matter of getting them through the system while these much larger class sizes are starting to age out. So it's no fundamental underlying economic weakness in the district or anything like that. It's just a natural process of these waves moving through. And I did provide the open enrollment in and out, and I'll get into those in just a minute, but you can see, this was a surge in both in and out, and I'm looking for those to return to some more normal levels. And then basically, those are just assumed to grow with at the same rate of change as the overall system population. This is more an accounting function than anything else, because this is the number that's actually, total served enrollment is the number that's actually being forecast.
Hey, John, I got a quick question for you.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So in almost all your projections, you have going from kindergarten to first grade, a reduction in students. Why is that?
So what happens, kindergarten includes both kindergarten and kindergarten prep. So you hold kids back for a year. So they, instead of going to school for, let's see, PK-12 is 14 years, right? Instead of 14 years, it's 15 years. Or instead of 13 years, it's 14 years. And so you only get a bite of those kids one time. So they're in kindergarten twice, but they're not in the other twice.
Quick question, maybe Christine. So like that 82 number for PK, doesn't that include kindergarten prep though? Because we have 82 kids in 4-year-old preschool right now. So we have 5 sections.
Right.
I forgot about that.
I just had to account for that.
Okay, so I forgot, we went from 4 to 5
That's
this
right.
year, that's why.
We increased the section,
Yep,
which then gave us more.
Yep.
I also believe, based on what John's saying here too, is that with younger kids, they stayed home until now it's like, okay, with COVID over, we're all gonna go. So I think that's why we have more, the added section as well as just kind of COVID. The example I use is that we're seeing that on the buses. We used to have so many cars outside, now a lot of kids are back on the buses. And so, and it's, I believe it's tied with COVID or COVID going.
So how many do we have in kindergarten prep this year? We have 15 kids, we have one section then, 10 kids? Okay,
I would-
well,
yeah.
All right. that helps. Sorry, John, I got it.
Great. So open enrollment FY23 was back down to 21 levels of net plus kids. But the only open enrollment in had been assumed more of an accounting feature than anything else again, to stabilize at about 129 per year, but it increased from 163 to 182. And open enrollment out also jumped from 128 to 170, which is pretty remarkable that you get that big a jump in both variables in 1 year. But again, the point I make every year on this is that open enrollment in is still your policy handle, the primary policy handle you have available to your district. It's like a battery, but it's like turning a ship, and you got to be forward looking. And if your capacity constraints are such that you decide what it's going to be, and it turns out you've got more kids than you were expecting, that's one that you have time to look at over a while and then dial that back if you're not getting, if you're getting more kids than you thought you were going to get. And of course, you know, it's a battery the other direction too, right? So if you're not, and which is really the best time to get open enrollment in is to maximize capacity utilization. Also, interestingly, if you're building for future capacity and you can manage to increase open enrollment and there's demand for it, to use it for a short period of time, for a number of years, to get maximum capacity utilization until your natural resident cohort ages into the system. So that's something to think about. So here's your open enrollment history. And again, you know, this is just so wildly chaotic that it's really difficult to estimate. But you're seeing, you know, your open enrollment in came down and now it's going back up. So that shift at the exact same time you're getting this was, well, that's what causes that. So this is where you're seeing how it hits. You'll see these waves in these different districts. So the way I break it down is by, and I've sent the underlying data so that your consultants can help you design capacity. And they can break this down by individual school or by individual grade or however they want on the long-term forecast. This one goes out to 2040. And you're seeing an immediate jump in this. So this is where you're seeing your economic growth and birth rates and just general community growth is being expressed in these younger cohorts. But on this picture, this is what's causing the flat. So here we're getting pretty immediate increases. And in your high school and middle school, we see a decline, while those younger, it's just the mirror image of what had happened in previous years, where you saw this flatness here, right? So that flatness here is starting to be manifest here well, here's the flatness you're seeing in the middle school, right? And then that will translate into the high school in subsequent years, and you'll start getting growth. This is one I introduced last year. Just this is one of the ones I use for just sensitivity analysis or a smell test or anything like that to see if things are changing radically over time. I do really what I'm comparing. I show K-12 here, but I'm really comparing first grade to 12th grade after it's fairly normalized and you've taken away the K-prep issues and those sorts of things. And so from first grade to 12th grade, you know, so in 2013, you grew from that cohort grew from 60 kids to 96. In 2023, it grew from 99 to 139, you know, for an increase of about 40 kids. But you're not seeing anything that you would say, oh, you know, these trends are changing dramatically. At least I don't see that. But, you know, but you keep in mind that, you know, that you are still getting some growth in there. But, you know, what are these kids? This isn't, if you were seeing economic growth, you know, you see it all over the place. in other words, that you would expect this to grow over time if it was dramatically more than this. But you got to remember, some chunk of this is those from St. Celia, right? St. Celia. And so that's like 16 of these kids, probably more than that. It's probably like 20 because you get some prior to when they leave the school. And of course, so it's, other than that, it's like a kid a year kind of thing in the cohort is about what you're seeing.
Hey, John, real quick, back to that slide. So just kind of looking at that, I mean, you go anywhere from 26 on the low end to 40 on the high end on class size growth from kindergarten to graduation.
Right.
Yeah, on the projections, I mean, if I project out kindergarten, you only have it growing 12. First grade, you have it growing 14. Second grade, you have it growing 14. Third, I mean, so why the big decrease in growth of class sizes? I mean, if we're averaging, let's just say we're averaging 32 or 33, whatever that is, over the past 10 years, what's the decrease down to now you're projecting, right around 13 or 14 in growth per class size?
Well, it is what it is. I don't know. You mean, so for example, you're seeing this first grade class, 2023 first grade class. That's what you're looking at?
114. If you slide that down to when they graduate, you're at 126. I think is the way I did it.
Well,
102 to 117, I think is what it is. Yep. So that's 15 kids to go from first grade to graduation. I'm just asking why.
So the 116 would go, that would be 19 to one, it would be 97 to 116, 102 to 126. Is that right? 102 to 120?
It'd be 102 to 117. For right now,
Yeah, you've got several years in there where it's only like 10 to 15, and in the previous slide, I mean, we're
Yeah.
40.
Well, it's a good observation. So I'm using this as a way to see if there, you think about the growth that you had to have to get some of this in terms of open enrollment or whatever it was. I don't know what the underlying factors are.
we don't have our open enrollment is limited, if any.
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, I'm not talking about today. I'm talking about what caused those previous classes to have the growth that they had. Okay, I don't know what all the factors were that caused this to happen. And when they come in, all I know is, well, here, let me get to it in a different way. I can take the total number, the kids that you got, and I can compare, and I can back test it. And I'll show you how I kind of did that. And to see if basing it on the underlying forecasts is rational. So I'm basing it on the underlying population forecasts. And if those are different, 10 lower, which would only be one per grade, right? Then that's what you'd see. I mean, it just is what it is. So is it possible that those change over time? And, yeah, then I'd be light by probably 100 kids. You go out that far, I'd probably be light on.
Yeah, so, I mean, one of the basic questions we have, if I understand your methodology, John, it's that you establish a market share for Gilbert out of Story County.
Right.
And one of your basic premises is that market share doesn't change.
No, it does change. And that's the next slide.
Okay.
Just quite predictably over time. Okay. So what I did was I took the underlying forecast. So this is based on the 2020 census. So the 2022 data, right, which updates the 2021 estimate. It's the 2020 actual census, and it's revised data going backwards. Okay. And so for each year I say, okay, so I start with an estimate, okay, that you're going to get, say, 13% of the Story County kids. And that grows. So if you just put that static amount in, you got 60% of what you should have gotten back in 1997, and you got 110, 12% this year of that expected amount. So instead of getting 13%, you're getting 15% of those. And so what I did this time, which I haven't done in the past, I just I look at these, I altered methodologies as I go forward as I learn things. But I mean, that's pretty high R squared in anything you do, right? 0.985. So I just take this factor, which is the slope, essentially the slope of this line is 0.0202. And instead of what I used to do, I'd use that to sort of put that growing market share into the forecast itself, into your student enrollment forecast. What I did this time was put it into the underlying forecast. So in other words, because what happens if you don't do that, you can get an amplified effect, right? Because you grow it and then you age them through the system and then you keep growing it and you can get an amplification. So that's what I did this time. And, and it's still within 100 kids or 200 kids over 20 years or something like that, which is, admittedly a couple classrooms probably, right?
So,
But in any case, I do assume that you'll get an increasing market share of the Story County kids.
that was my question, because this is kind of on the assumption these numbers come from, okay, Story County has a growth rate of so much, and we're just saying that almost that we assume that Story County is growing at the same rate all across Story County. Would that be correct? But that's kind of
What I'm doing is correcting that assumption. There's an implicit assumption, right, that Story County is growing the same. And so what I'm doing is explicitly breaking that assumption and assuming that you're going to take 0.0202 more per year.
okay. That was just my concern, because we know that Story County is not growing in the same rate in all different places. It's growing
No, of course not.
north and south of Ames.
That's right.
Huxley and Gilbert.
That's right. And then the other thing I did was looked at, you look at the number of kids, but if you're saying, I looked at new housing data, that hasn't changed appreciably. You're still looking at, 15 houses, 14 houses in Story County, in the Gilbert School District. That is not in Ames. And 55 houses, 60 houses on that order in Ames, that in the Gilbert School District.
Is that
And
building permits? Or is that building permits or new houses, or what's the?
No, so I took, I used to do building permits and I couldn't get them. So I just took the assessor's data and took when the house was constructed. So when it's first assessed. Well, it's actually the variable in the assessor's database is year built. And so, and you get about a third of those. There's like a third of a kid per house, 2.4 per house. And interestingly, why these studies have been done, that you actually get more kids per existing house than you get per new house. New houses yield fewer children than existing stock.
Yeah, thanks
So,
for explaining that. I mean, that helps. It's still hard to imagine middle school, high school shrinking, given that we have a 30 to 40 kid growth out of the starting first grade every year.
Well, you've got 102, 112, 104, 120, and here you got 137, 136, 1, you get a bump on them. These new kids coming in, I mean, these grades coming in are much higher than the previous cohorts. It just takes a while for them to build through the system.
Okay. All right.
Or go back to, FY21, 95, 98, 99, you don't see anything like that. Right? This is the ones that are now, right? So I don't know.
But to have graduating classes in 2032 and 34 and 35 of 117, 118,
Yeah.
it's hard for me to imagine.
So we're not gonna go backwards. So, okay.
They're about 300 acres.
Well, this
6
Well,
months.
this 104 kids, this 104 kids is 16 less than the prior, than the prior cohort, right? Now, this one did grow by 10 kids. Right? And this one is not, and it's possible that that could happen. Oh, but that shifted too, I think, right? So it depends on, I don't know. The Catholic school and when those kids come in and coming off the pandemic year, it's difficult to know what all the sources of those are. But
John, we appreciate the information. We have all the data. Tyler's got 6 pages of yellow and green and blue on it. I love it. It's very pretty. So
sounds great.
we appreciate it. We'll use the data here in our next conversation. So thanks for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, guys. You take care.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now, CMJ, folks ready to wow us? How's that for setting the bar high?
This is a good way to start less fun.
Maybe your information will be more understood. I agree with your questions.
Go ahead.
So
I'm gonna get some more.
that auction, they auctioned off about 180 acres right there by the trailer park.
20,000 acres.
Yeah. It was him or Hunziker or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
For
don't,
housing.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we're talking.
These assessments, they base our assessments
Yep.
on permit
Yep.
assessments. Yeah.
Right.
we're not shrinking our high school in the next.
Anyway, go.
We were gonna
At
propose
about
a 1,000
1,000
rooms.
Yeah, we don't need all the space. Could we just get rid of things, take it out of commission, cost you less?
Yeah, exactly.
So I had a call with John about a week ago, just talking through it and trying to get prepared for it. And I mean, I think as far as our conversation goes today, even if we aren't totally convinced on middle school and high school.
Yeah.
I think the numbers that you see still tell the story that you guys are seeing happen. I mean, there's the small dip in middle school and high school. So like numbers 5 years out are sort of, they don't really pass the sniff test. But once you look 10, 20 years out, I think you'll find that even with those numbers, it's telling the same
How do
story.
we,
that we've been
do
talking
we
about.
employ John? How does he come to us?
Yeah,
So what?
we did.
We did,
Yeah.
for fair enough. Thank you.
All right.
So all the numbers you're seeing are gonna be based off of that. I'll get into it later. Jeff, you weren't at the last meeting when I talked through the Discover report, and you were the one that was so excited for all the data.
I know.
So I was, I mean, I'm not gonna dwell on it too much, but I know that's been released, and I know, had you guys had a chance to look through it a little more thoroughly than, or is there any questions that came up from it, or anything we want to say about that before we move into this? Okay. So I'll show some of these older slides. These are the rankings of condition, capacity, and then the environments, and how each school sort of stacks up against each other. So we tried to have these key categories and see who's doing better, who's doing worse in these categories. I think you'll find, as far as condition and the environments go, your older schools are to be expected. They're more dated. Teachers are unable to use some of those spaces in the ways which they desire for their modern classrooms. And so it gets better in your newer facilities, obviously. But regardless, each facility has capacity concerns, and that's coming in a variety of ways. It's some classrooms are undersized. It's some you don't have enough classrooms. some where classrooms are, every teacher has a classroom, so if you get any more teachers, like in the high school, you're gonna have to decide, are we sharing classrooms, or are we getting new classrooms? And so these are the types of decisions that we're trying to get out of these. And so capacity is probably going to drive all these discussions, but we cannot forget about making these environment improvements, making sure that teachers are still put in that position, that they are putting their best foot forward when educating. And then also condition wise, we know De Novo has that report, but also how do we increase spaces? So even if it is the driver, we got to remember that those two other categories we're trying to elevate with us. So these were the three goals that we're looking for at the end of that Discover report. So determine the standard section size for each desired grade. When you do the math and you figure out how many classrooms do we have with those enrollment projections, some classes already are above your ideal section size. Some are projected to be there in the next 5-10 years. And so that's obviously going to be a big part of our plan. We know that there's fluctuations in grade level. So how do we be flexible? So we're not just dedicating classrooms to this will be a 3rd grade classroom forever, or this will be a 7th grade classroom forever. Can we move with those fluctuations and use that as part of our planning? And then maximize efficiency with this growth. We want to make sure that we're not being wasteful, we're being resourceful, we're using everything because we're going to need it to fit all those students living 10, 20 years in the future. So what we've done so far is first meeting was we looked heavily at capacity grade groupings. And so this was a discussion that we had with a lot of the building faculty, some administration principals. This was mainly, we're not looking at any costs really yet. We're not looking at any, where does this school go? We're purely looking at, these are how students are grouped together. This is how many students there's going to be. Does this work? Is this developmentally appropriate? Is the main focus of that. And then today, we're able to narrow down based off of those discussions and look at now, how do we afford this? What's it going to cost? And then in the future, how are we going to pull the strings phasing wise, scheduling wise, budget wise to actually make that end goal into a reality? So we are at meeting 2, even though we'll probably talk a little bit about phasing and construction today. But this is really where we're at, where the majority of today's discussion is about financial capacity and project costs. So this is a familiar slide to some of our administration. So this is sort of a template of how we're looking at your schools right now. So on this sheet, you'll see a site plan of each school. And then below it is what grades are in it currently. Then we have, based off of John's reports with ISFIS, it's what is the 2023 enrollment, 2028, 2033, and then jumping 20 years to 2043. And then below that overall enrollment is the grade range. So how many students per grade are expected based off of the classrooms that you have or that we're proposing in some of these options. So the last part of it is if each room in the building was filled to your ideal grade level, this is the cap that you would be at. So we know if you're over that bottom cap, that means that you, in some areas, are going to be over your ideal grade section limit. So if we take primary school, for example, I mean, right now it's at 410. In the future, 20 years from now, it's looking at 614. I mean, that the number jumps to 33 to 36 students per section. If you don't do anything to those elementary schools, this is how it would play out over the next 20 years. And so obviously, we're looking at how do we shift students around, build new, renovate in order to fit those students so that we can get those bottom numbers, the students per classroom, into their ideal state that we determined.
Question.
Go ahead.
On that last slide, when you've got capacity, like for example, in high school, you're looking at just classroom or you're looking at functionality, like for lunch and all of the general spaces?
So just classrooms, however, for high school, it's making the assumption that each classroom is filled homogeneous. And we
In
know
every class.
there's some classes that are 10, there's some that are 30.
Sure.
So high school is very averaged out,
And it doesn't take into account the support space.
but no support
It's
stations.
just the class.
Yeah. So this slide is how do we start thinking through options? And this is really us just trying to attack it from all angles and thinking about what works, what doesn't, not thinking about costs. We're thinking about purely grade groupings. And we're doing this with building leadership and district leadership to see what works, what doesn't. And so through this process, we've been able to eliminate some options and filter through it. And we've had some like key guidelines or foundational suggestions that have allowed us to filter from that super zoomed out view into what you're seeing today, which is 5 different options, which have come out of that initial teacher or building leadership meeting. And so the rules that we have established are keep facility sizes under 900. This is coming from community reports. You have this culture of the small town community, individuality, and parents and community members really appreciate small class sizes, teacher to student ratio, that ability to feel comfortable in your surroundings. And so we explore some options like, well, if our 2 oldest facilities are pre-K through 5, what if we just made one building that housed all of them? Because that would eliminate all our conditional needs. But 5 years from now, that exceeds 900 students. And it started to feel like students would get lost in that, and students wouldn't be able, you would lose that sense of culture, that sense of identity. And so that option was eliminated for that reason, because the leadership just didn't feel like it fit Gilbert's identity. Don't put all the eggs in 1 or 2 baskets. So I remember there was an option that was, what if we moved 2nd graders out of the elementary school and 6th graders out of the middle school? And so we spread out students in those buildings, and then we built 1, 2 through 6. And we could do that and it would fit in the budget, but it would take up all the budget. And so now we don't have any money left over for improvements at the elementary school, or if we want to do district level goals, we can't spend all of our money on that big of a facility. So we eliminated some of those options. And then as far as grade groupings, the last 2 are similar. We threw a 7th through 12 facility out just to see how our teachers would respond. And they didn't think that putting 7th graders with the high schoolers and 8th graders even, I guess, going back to the Gilbert identity, they just didn't think that that is who you are. So they didn't respond well to that activity. We took it out. And the last thing was keep intermediate students young. And so when we're looking at some of those border students, like 4th graders, 6th graders, do they go up with the grade above, or do they go down below? Teachers, we heard over and over again to keep those students young. It's better to have them in the elementary schools a little bit longer, as opposed to sending them up to be with 7th or 8th graders. And so we were able to filter some of those options out as well. So those are our rules. Odds are at the end of this conversation, you're going to ask, well, did you consider this? Or what if we did this and this and that? And yeah, we probably considered most of them, not to say we've considered everything. So definitely throw out ideas if you have them. But it did start out with a lot of different options and we're filtered down. So you're hearing a very filtered approach today. But without any further ado, we will start to talk about some of those options. So I talked right away about if you didn't do anything to any of your schools, you're looking at grade sizes and above 33, which is unacceptable by your standards. So this is an addition to each facility, 4 separate additions, and we're getting every school up to that 6 section limit. And so every grade would get at least 1 more section. And then it's also includes a little bit of contingency, just in case. I know there's some schools where you've already sacrificed some auxiliary spaces because you're so short on classrooms. And so we've overshot it just a little bit to make sure that you get some of those spaces back. So you're looking at all of these. If we go up to 6 sections, right now. In the 10-year future, most of them are meeting your ideal section limit. Once you start to look at 2043, when total enrollment goes up to 2,200, that's when this plan starts to get a little bit shaky. You're probably gonna have to reevaluate sometime between that 15 to 20-year range. Just because, yeah, there is a point with this, it's sort of a Band-Aid. It's doing everything that you can for the next, to get by for the next 20 years, but not necessarily anything farther than that. And as far as how you would get through with this plan, so we're looking at 4 additions. It's about 20,000 square feet total. Each cost that you're seeing per school, you're looking at deferred maintenance, which is coming from the de novo report. So we're making sure all of our systems are up to date, bringing everything up to speed. We're also looking at that addition. And then for those elementary schools, which we found to be a little bit bigger of a gap on what teachers are using it for versus how they want to use it, we included a line item to remodel those classrooms and try to bring them up to 21st century standards. And so that's what you're seeing as a total cost. As far as whether each site can handle it, I think the intermediate site is going to be the biggest issue if you were to do this. I mean, you're so landlocked here. Yes, you can do it, but it's what are we going to sacrifice? Parking has to go somewhere. Your recreation has to go somewhere. Do we take out, I mean, if we go into the football area, who are we making that? I mean, obviously you use everything. It's going to be a can of worms, and it's going to domino effect really quick at the intermediate site.
Andrew, can I interrupt you?
Yes, you can.
Just because Tyler, I see you taking notes, I just kind of want to just stamp this by saying these numbers, these are cost per square foot numbers that we're taking our first stamp in the dark in. So this is, don't take this to the bank. Right?
Just sign right here.
I was just gonna say, he just took out loan pages.
So,
Yeah, it's gonna get it.
okay.
Joe's here to be safety tonight.
So I ask a question, and
Yep.
We do spending policy, that's our deal, okay? So if I had to look at this and I was the owner of this, I had to say this is our deal. Is there any thought putting primary and intermediate back together? Because that gives us one less set of management personnel we have to employ as we keep getting bigger.
We'll keep going to options that will do that.
Okay.
Maybe not completely.
How many different options are you going to show?
Okay, so we show this one. We show an option where it's moving 3rd graders out. We show an option where it's moving 4th graders out. Two of those have 1A, 1B. So 5 options total, and you just saw number 1.
They'll be moving
To
towards
answer your
tonight.
question,
Yeah.
not pre-K through 5 though.
Yeah.
Pre-K through 5 gets to be,
That's the one that pushes you over the 900. So we took that one out as a constraint so that we'd never have a building with a capacity of 900.
I'm not sure that's an underpinning that I agree with.
Okay.
So that would be a take from me, is that if we truly are gonna grow, then we can't have the small number, we can't have those barriers moving forward. We're always gonna be 8 buildings or 9 buildings, we're all gonna have, and nothing against all these guys, they do great, but we've got to look at it. Every time we add a building, we add a principal, we add a counselor, we add a nurse, right? And so we have the infrastructure to support that, so I don't necessarily agree with that underpinning, but we'll go with it since that's your model, and that's fine.
and not to spoil the ending, but one of the last ones that we show. So if you go pre-K through 5, it's like 900 students in one facility and 300 students in the other. So what if you go 600?
Yeah, go ahead, let's see them, let's see them.
I mean,
And let me just jump in. A couple of things I just feel the need to say is, I just want to remind everyone, these are all just options that we're hearing for the first time.
Yeah.
The board's not making any decisions about all these. This is a work session, just saying that for everyone who's joining us. So that's great conversation. The other piece is, it is feedback that I gave the team, which is that it changes the feel of what we do once really, I would say, over 600 students in a building. So that's just, I want you to know my philosophy about it as well, is that once you hit 900 kids in a building, it really does change the culture. So it's kind of that balance of like, as we hear from, and it does impact what you're saying, Jeff, about the different components within that. But at the same time, it changes the feel of what we've heard from people about Gilbert and small neighborhood schools. So that's where I had shared that with them, and that's how they pulled it off the table. So just so you're aware, that's where that's coming from, more than.
I got one quick question,
Yep.
just on 6,000 square feet classrooms. Is there, I mean, lunchrooms, is there gymnasium space built into that too, or is it truly just classrooms?
This option, no.
Okay.
The next options, once you start to say, we're bringing in a whole nother grade.
Yeah.
Then it starts to be your existing infrastructure just wouldn't fit in. So now we're
I
thinking,
got it, I just wanted to make sure.
yeah, this option, no. The other thing that I want to say about this option, in any option really is we're purely looking at grade alignments right now. And if you, obviously, you know, your budget from Piper Sandler is 31 to 33. So if you see that 25, there is a little bit of room with each of these options. So we have like the district level desires. These are sort of one-offs that can be put onto any. So what we fill up that last space, unless you don't, unless you choose not to, you can also not use up your entire capacity. But there are other options to fill up that last 6 to 8 million. So
We need a new theater already?
uh,
Sorry. I said that loud.
He didn't put it on here, but a pool came up a couple of times too.
Oh, I know.
it's
As it should.
it's gonna be hard to
As it
fit
should.
into that.
Is it, I just back to the theater, so that's all just because of size, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we just need more space.
Yeah.
I
They're
say it's-
barely all fitting in there.
Yeah.
You know.
Or more performances.
Yeah, that's the thing, right?
So this is one I sort of alluded to. If this site is deemed unable to be built on, what if we just take that addition and put it at the primary elementary school? And like I said, it's not the same when you're adding an entire grade because the lunchroom isn't sized. You might be looking at more than one art and music room, some of those shared spaces. So it's not just like we're adding another 5,000 square feet here. This addition gets a little bit bigger and therefore a little bit more expensive. And so this is shifting third graders over. You're looking at about $30 million.
9 million spent on intermediate for deferred maintenance.
That's deferred maintenance and updates. And that's another thing that I want to clarify is, so if obviously you have a maintenance budget and that's covering some of that deferred maintenance, it's not all coming out of bond. And so we can tweak some of those numbers and say, we don't want some of this maintenance to come out of our bond money, or we can get by with what the classrooms are. So maybe we can get those enhanced environments down a little bit. So there's some wiggle room in some of those budgets, but if we're looking at purely new construction, those are a lot more concrete. We have a square footage that we know we need to hit, and it's gonna probably be more expensive than a lot of people want. This is a one-off of that option. So it's still keeping that pre-K 3 the same. But what if we move 6th graders out of the middle school? So now they have a little bit of breathing room. And we have a 4, 5, 6 facility on a new site. So that's taking that $9 million that we had allotted to this building as far as improving the environments and improving or getting that deferred maintenance and dedicating it to a $14 million new building. In addition, there was that middle school cost of about a little over $1 million for addition. That's also chunked onto because 6th grader comes to this building. And so it's trying to combine a couple of those resources into a new building. And then this building could then function as the district office. You have a lot more room to breathe with as far as district goes. It can be your transportation hub. Later on, you can figure out what to do with some of that extra classroom if you choose to leave it. You can, schools go apartments, it can become early childhood or child care center. There's a lot of space if you do choose to go with a totally new 4 through 5 or 4 through 6 facility. this is as big as we explored as far, so this is pre-K through fourth, because we didn't want to cross that threshold into a pre-K through 5. And so this is adding a pretty sizable addition onto that elementary school. And then, so the existing intermediate school and middle school, not any additions, but one less grade so they can spread out a little bit. So this is one of the biggest additions. It's about 45,000 square feet. You're able to get 2 new grades as well as add a section to the existing grades. And then the other schools sort of spread out to fit that out. And another way of thinking about this, so this is another one of those 1A, 1Bs. If this number scares you, where the 2043 enrollment is getting in that 900 range, the cap is at 875. Another way of thinking about this option is splitting those 2 options up. So intermediate, middle school, and high school are staying the same. We have a pre-K through 1 facility and a 2 through 4 facility separate from each other. So it doesn't necessarily change the overall scheme and grade groupings. It just changes what roof they're under. And so it's very similar as far as costs go. This one is using that top limit of about 33 million. But like I said, with deferred maintenance and enhanced environments, we're able to tweak that. So if you do want to get some of those district level goals or high school goals, how are we going to tweak those or budget differently? And that's some of those conversations when we look towards next week or next meeting, phasing, how do we tweak these options so that you can fit everything you want into these greater subgroups? And so that's where we're at as far as how the options have been filtered down, how we're trying to pack as much as we possibly can into your overall budget of 31 to 33 million. And trying to use everything that we've learned from administrators, principals, community members to create options that truly fit the identity that you're trying to have at Gilbert.
Now back to that last one, why not, why wouldn't it be like a K through 2 and then like a 3 through 5 new facility and then 6, I mean just almost what it is today, just new facility.
A new 3-5 facility.
Yeah, I mean, why, I mean, I'm just thinking, you've got K through 2 now, you've got 6 through 8 already now. So really what we're saying is the intermediate long-term is not gonna fill our needs, so we need an intermediate building. I mean, why not, why was that, I'm just curious why that wasn't an option.
I'll say the closest one is the first one that we explored.
Yeah.
And so,
And just redo it. I mean,
yeah, we're looking at about $10 million put into that, and we're at 25 million.
Which it technically could do that though. It would be more replacing all, but you do have wiggle room in that budget.
I mean, between the elementary and the intermediate, I mean, in your estimation, which one is the best fit for long-term growth? I mean, if you had it, I mean, I'm just thinking, if we're gonna put a bunch of, that one is, okay, that's. what I
Which
was
one?
thinking too.
The
Elementary.
elementary.
We're putting, I mean, again, just thinking, we're millions and millions of dollars in facilities and you're looking ahead 10+ years. I mean, are we just doing what we've been doing for the last how many years, just trying to keep making these work?
I like that idea. I don't know if number wise would make it work.
Then the other question, I mean, go back to this facility and land. I mean, obviously, we're locked here. We don't have a lot of space. What other things have we explored with regards to getting creative with the land we have? I mean, have we talked about that at all? What things we can do with just the plot we have here?
How attached are you to the field and the track?
That's a personal question. I think people would be offended if I gave them my honest answer. I'd say none.
I mean, a field is cheaper to rebuild than an intermediate building.
Right.
Yeah. And you've got a big field, a tiny playground, and an old school. I mean, that's how I look at it.
You got a good grass guy.
So how do we, again, we've got the land that's utilized very little. We've got, you know, terrible outdoor, in my mind, for this facility. The amount of kids here, outdoor play area, parking is okay. Bus barn is pathetic. Or bus shed, I should say, not a barn. And then, so again, I'm just thinking, what can we do here for this land?
Of your 4 facilities, this is the smallest site, and it also has the bus barn, and district offices overhead. It's also a repurposed building, so it's a lot bigger than it probably needs to be, with spaces that are not usable or underutilized.
Yeah.
So for those reasons, I think it's still a good opportunity.
Yeah.
And it, I
We
mean, I
got some
know
land over there too that we could put it, I mean, really, we've
that,
got a
you got
bunch
a
of land.
floodplain
You have a
over there.
Floodplain?
Yeah, you can't go over there.
I would say your
How
best
low?
option is south of the high school athletic facilities. You do have a
Yeah,
decent
we
chunk
gotta-
of land there too.
How low is the floodplain? Down a couple feet or?
Well, you got geothermal over there, and you've got floodplain, there's not much area.
It's a very small.
And contradictory to what we just learned from John, I think that your middle school is gonna be bigger capacity issues sooner. or later.
It already is.
That's why a
Middle
lot of
school is
these
one
are
where we're already at
showing
27
grades.
per classroom.
What was that, Joe? So that's why a lot of these are showing, leaving 7, 8 over there, to now
No, because then it
mix them at the high school and bring 6th grade over here or somewhere else. So,
Each one where the 6th grade comes over seems to make sense, right?
and that would be a more major project.
Be more what?
It'd be more of a major problem. And what this is showing right here is basically a small addition to each school with some interior remodel. You start removing stuff, then you're, basically what we're saying is the middle school stays largely as it is, other than maintenance items, same with the high school, and you put most of your money into this building and into the primary. And we just learned the high school is too big, so you can tear a wing off that.
Yeah.
It's less space. to
Yeah. Well, Joe, and that's what the question I had, and I don't know, or Andrew, was that, and the other options you're showing where there was either a new building or we shifted some grade levels, I didn't see any dollar amount under the high school, so that, what you're telling us there is we really wouldn't do anything with the high school,
With
is
all
that
these
correct?
plans, we're basically saying the high school, although it's gonna hit capacity needs down the road, it's not a more immediate need. So it's kind of a tertiary thing down the road. And there's also 80% before, kind of the different school layouts with utilization of each of the spaces. And through that, we've shown that primary, intermediate, and middle school, those classrooms are in use a lot longer throughout the day in high school. So there might be some opportunities to find some efficiencies.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
That's
I
why
just
it's
know
not,
Yeah, and I understand that, I just know, that's just a worry that I had when I looked at that about the high school.
Yeah.
Or sort of that capacity related to space, but I understand the conversation I had previously about using it differently, but that's a.
in an ideal world, if you didn't have a budget, you'd probably touch all four buildings.
That also fits into the one-offs. I mean, any option, you can include something at the high school and it wouldn't affect the grade groupings. It wouldn't affect total enrollment at the building. It wouldn't affect how many students per classroom you had, but it's not changing any of those numbers or grade groupings. And so it doesn't hit that level and can therefore essentially be tacked on to any option that you choose, if you choose to go that route.
And just real quick, I think we're all on the same page, but just since we looked at projections, and I think that we all think that that's probably not as high as those numbers are in reality. Everything that we're planning for here, at least showing, is anticipating growth, whether it's 10 years or it's 20 years, because it's just, in our opinion, it's better to be conservative with that than it is to guess and fail short. So,
What was the cost for the expansion on the high school? $1.2 million? Is that what it was on those 2 rooms? You gotta look at the cost.
The last one, the last expansion we did.
Yeah, no,
Oh, sorry, I thought
the
you
one
said.
up here, I can't see it very well.
That first one, that estimate.
Yeah,
Wait,
it was up there, I know.
I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
There-
1.6,
there-
one
there
more.
it was.
Forward. 1.6.
Yeah, I mean, for $1.6 million and we're gonna run a bond, you know, for the cost of bonding and stuff, we have to attach that to the initial offering because we're gonna pay $200,000 or $300,000 for bond. We need to get it all. You know, then we're 30% in or 20% into the cost.
That would say you're doing the whole project.
Right. Oh, yeah. I mean, you have to include the high school.
So it's okay. I'd like to just ask Steve and your team
I mean, I don't know if you saw, this is the first we've seen these options. I don't, you guys had a good session, gave feedback, but maybe didn't see all these options or did, or any.
They saw the options, previously they saw the options, but we didn't have the dollar amounts tied to it. It was great feedback that they gave to the team that said, I can't really weigh in until I know a little bit more, knowing the numbers are just, a place to look. So we are seeing it a second time here, but with a different viewpoint, with the dollar amounts to it. So.
I wouldn't mind hearing from Christine and yeah.
I totally agree.
And then I've got a few comments myself.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Sure,
you want to
our
Amy?
first,
Yeah.
we would like to see the gray alignment exist how it is. Was our first, this was the last time we talked, but it makes me nervous to have a fifth transition with kids. 2 years, get to know kids, find the sports that they need, makes them take them and they go on to another school. It's a big change for kids if we go to a fifth building.
Oh, yeah.
So that's where we had talked, our first preference would be keep the 4 building system. Might change, it still could be 4 building, one of those options is pre-K 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12. I see who asked it just a little bit ago, like this model here of the existing setup, $10 million into the intermediate versus a couple models later, 14 million for a brand new. Maybe that model was a 2.4 or 4.6.
Can you go to that one? I agree with her. Let's look at those numbers. New facility.
This is a 2.4 new facility and it's.
Do you have one that was still 4
I
buildings?
thought it was
I did,
4.
okay.
Wasn't there
Is it
one?
this one?
Yes.
Yeah, 14.
14.
Yeah,
So
there you
about
go.
50 times a million.
That's not a new facility, that's just.
Yeah, that's a new facility.
It is a
Yeah.
new facility.
That's
Yeah.
a new facility.
Yeah, they-
Is this, district offices, transportation hub,
We'd
This
lose
seems
a
like-
lot of this building.
this seems like too much building.
You'd lose a lot of this building. So you gain back some site to be able to have buses here that function well. District office that functions well. Potentially open up some site for future development too if you need it.
Let's say if there's extra room, does it make sense to have? Because I've always, like with the bus barn being here, okay, you got a lot of trade type stuff
Right.
here. Does it make sense to separate that from the high school? Or is that,
Yeah, can you do a
'cause
CTE
that's
site here or
something that-
something collected with some partners? It gives you site back.
I would say it's
It's still in
space
your
that we have, but is that wise, and I don't know. I'm just
Anything
thinking
else?
out loud.
Just one thing I wanted to add is, our first priority is school purposes, but you all drive by here and evenings and weekends, these gyms are used all the time. So just thinking how can we continue, and actually not even just for community purposes, our own school athletics, both gyms are used. And so just making sure that we can't afford to lose the gyms, which you all.
Thank you, Amy. Cindy?
I would say, the things that Amy and Christine covered that are some priorities for us, less transitions for kids, and we keep the feel we have of number of teams in the buildings is great. Tyler, I really appreciate your comment earlier about the functionality of our facilities. That's where the high school, we need to look at where we want that to be for the high school, because where we're at right now, we don't have enough science labs. I see a couple of things listed on there as potential implications. I will tell you what we talk about at the high school that we know is serious needs right now, that we are making things work that aren't great, we need at least one more science lab. And that could be, we have a room that could be converted into a science lab. Now, this was what Amy talked about, other things with the activities facilities. As we've grown since the building was started 10 years ago, there's more facilities needs for functionality. Restrooms and locker rooms on that activity side of our buildings are just not meeting the needs of our student athletes, our participants in activities. So those are things that Ian Smith, our activities director, would like to be here tonight, but clinic, he would speak to you about. We don't have the locker room space for our student athletes right now. So classrooms, yes, that wing on the high school would be ideal, especially because I worry if we don't get included in this, when are we next, right? I mean, I have to ask that question, when are we next? That's my concern. So finishing that would be important, but just even right now, functionality of our space, we're running short on some of those things right now.
Can I
Do
ask
you
you,
have OA implications?
I feel really good about our classes and what we are able to teach and do with our vocational agriculture. I mean, it's fantastic. We are very fortunate with what a lot of you guys took part in as far as building the facilities we have right now. Our kids have a ton of great opportunities. We are able to serve those kids. That's not a huge priority right now for us.
What about gymnasium space?
Gymnasium space, just like Amy said, we just don't have enough. You know, we have kids who start practicing during basketball season. You'll see them here. They start practicing at 6:45 in the morning at these gyms. They're practicing over there in the high school gyms. We have again, they practice after school and at 6 o'clock at night during basketball season in order to make that work in the gyms. So a lot of those facilities we have a lot of student participation. It's a great thing here in our district. It is big to be involved. And keeping up with that, I would like that to be a priority for us.
I saw weight room too on there. That was one of the
Yes, the
desires.
weight room you'll see our weight rooms are packed. We have 35, 40 kids lifting in there during each weight room class. It's busy all day long. And again, that just goes with the growth of our student population in the past 10 years. That's where you see our classroom side, you know, they're okay. But those facilities, we need to catch up on.
I'd like to reference back to your science comments.
Mhm.
Do you separate the classroom from the lab? I mean, do you have a classroom where they teach and then have lab time, kind of like a college environment a little bit?
Right now, what we're doing, we are teaching the class in the lab. It's not ideal, but that it's fine. I will say that's fine. That's not our bigger issue than that is that we don't, it's very hard to figure out how to teach enough lab classes throughout the day. Because we have 3 science labs for 550 students. And lab classes are offered 9th through 12th grades. And we have a lot of students who take them with our high achieving students. They take them all the way through high school. So 3 labs. That's what's hard. Yes, it's hard to teach a science class in a lab. It is, but the bigger issue is we just need labs to do science classes. That's where we're at. That answer your question, Jeff?
Yeah, kind of. You and I conversed about this to some extent. And, you know, I always told Christine is and I'll just throw it out there, but the cost of facilities and everything, you know, I can see someday the teachers having an office and travel to a room to teach, especially at the rate at which things are costing. And I just didn't know if
Sure.
that would work in your world, if you had three labs and I don't know which hand, I'm sorry, but 3 labs and then you had a place for to teach. I just didn't know if that was something.
Right now, they're teaching, the science labs are full each period. They're teaching them all period long. And the science teachers actually have one office in the middle of all the science labs. And so they go there while the other science teacher teaches in the lab beside them. So some of those things, it is nice to be able to share that. Some of that is already happening. Now, I will tell you philosophically, this goes to Christine mentioned before, it's not always ideal for a teacher to, the world history teacher to not be able to make their classroom a world history classroom. It's not always ideal. I'm not even, so in my perfect world, I want the world history teacher to have a world history classroom, to have a social studies classroom. That is definitely the best environment. As we talk about teachers having the best environment to teach and students having the best environment, that's the best. However, even outside of that, we still need these lab spaces, even if you say your teachers need to share more classrooms. I'm not even speaking to that. I'm just speaking to the functionality of the space we have. We need more labs. We need more weight room space. We need more facilities, restrooms, locker rooms. Those things.
Well, and I also think, real quick, and then we'll go to Mr. Danielson, but the other piece to think about that is that college model, like you talked about, where a teacher might have office hours, and you think about when we talk about mental health or mental wellness of our kids, yeah, they can figure that out, but they also know where, you know, Mrs. Bassett's classroom is, and they can go right there and see her and see for tutoring, kind of changes that whole model, and so it's not, it's been done, it's just, I'm not sure that that's, I like that, the perfect world, it's not necessarily that perfect world model, so.
And we're not a college campus and we don't want to be, right? I mean, we don't want to, we're not meant for college students, we're meant for high school students who need interventions, they need to step in and see the teacher needs to have a classroom space, and our school is not set up with office spaces for teachers. We do not have common workspaces, we don't have those collaborative spaces in high school.
Thank you, okay, Mr. Danielson.
I think like Ian said, we all like our configuration, that's what we know, that's what we're comfortable with. That said, just me looking specific to the middle school, we just finished a 4-room addition. If this 6th section moves up, which we anticipate it will, right now 6th grade is, and so then those rooms all be full, and so those 4 rooms will be used. I think looking at us just from those other spaces, my band room in 6th grade now, last I had checked, I have 93 kids in bands. So that room is not big enough, so we have an A and a B band, they're not able to play together. And so they'll be divided as they move up. And so we're looking at having split bands, and so they won't play as a 6th grade band until they get to high school, because the band space isn't big enough. The gym right now, we share, our gym is smaller than the high school gym, for those of you, maybe hopefully all of you have been in there, but so classes of 28, 29, 30. So I have sometimes between 56 and 60 kids in there. We drop the curtain, and we make it work. It's obviously not ideal, and so as those class sizes get bigger, that's just more bodies in there and more potential for injuries or whatnot. We're at the point now, my lunchroom holds 156. It's my 6th grade right now is in the mid 140s. And so we're gonna be looking probably soon at splitting lunch. And again, we can make that work, that's not a problem. I think just thinking of keeping it 6, 7, 8, if you look at an addition, what I said to them is I'm curious where that would go with that waterway going through. We're hemmed in, we can't go north. There's a water retention pond to the east where we might put a expanded band room. So I think we just, so do we keep building south away from the entrance, away from the parking lot? So I just said I'd be curious if we keep it at 6, 7, 8, what that might look like. Supposedly when they originally built the building, each wing was designed so you could add on each wing. And then Halen said you could only go south, so I don't know. I know that was the original intent, each wing you could easily add on, so there would see it be the east wing and the west wing where you could add on.
When it was originally built, that's my understanding.
That's my understanding too.
That was originally the intent, but then Ayla said there wasn't enough space or something to add those on, and so the only way you could grow the south. So I don't know. That's just what Ayla research.
You're probably right. I don't remember that conversation. I just know that when we chose which direction we went south.
Yeah, we went south. Originally, it was designed to go east and west as well. So each way.
But we only needed to put it
South.
forward,
Right.
so we went south.
Correct.
I don't know that it's not an option to go east, but either way. Yeah.
So I think, preference is 6, 7, 8, because, like I said, that's what we're comfortable with, but I think for me, just looking at it from the rest of the lens, I just would have to get more information on what that might look like, and what the impact is, and
I think, I wanted to just, Stacy wasn't able to be here this evening, she hasn't been feeling well, so, that's why she's not here, but I know one of the things that she feels very strongly about, and I know Amy, you guys have had a lot of conversations about it, is keeping that primary building, with the littles, if you want to call it that. She feels very strongly about that and really likes having that group together. It works really well in the model that they have it. We didn't really talk about it. Maybe you guys did about the 3rd grade piece moving over. I'm not sure about that piece, about how she feels about that, but I know that keeping the primary grades together, she liked that and knows that there's a lot that needs to be done, which she shared with all of us in these meetings. So I want to, I don't want to speak for her, but I want to make sure that her viewpoint is also represented here tonight.
Christine, can I just, one
yeah.
more thing I forgot to
Go
mention?
right ahead.
And I don't know, talking with the architects, one thing that we did share, middle school is the only building that doesn't have a secure entrance, the door is locked. but once somebody gets in, they have complete access to the building and in the office, the secretary would have to hurdle the desk to get to them, right? So, I don't know if these all models include secure entrance at the middle school, but I do think that's something, especially as we're planning our next intruder drill, I do think that's something that needs to be in any bond, that plan, whatever that looks like, so.
Just a reminder that we currently do have the bell system to log people in, but if there is a barrier there when you first come in, but just so you're aware of that. But
Have you
that is-
guys looked into the state audit as far as, so they have the $50,000 for,
Yep, we
you've already started
have that
process?
scheduled
Yep.
and that's coming.
I would imagine that would definitely be an item on that list. They probably, but $50,000 is not going to cover that.
Yeah, that and a few other.
Sorry, too much.
Where you're-
Too much,
Yes.
a lot of extra.
That's happening.
Christine, do we have the original construction documents of both the middle school and high school?
I'm sure we do.
What was your question?
The original construction documents for both the new buildings?
We need them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
We'll
wanna
look
look through
at what we
those.
Yeah.
So
We
we
talk
have-
about like
we
certain
have a
legislations, like let's just.
We don't have original.
No, we might not have the original for this.
Yeah, we'll have to look. Okay.
Yeah, anything else from your standpoint?
Well, I will tell you that as I've, second or third time, I think I've looked at this, and I think my mind sort of shifts each time. Again, I keep going back to, which we're gonna talk about a little bit more here, is it's all about enrollment, right? What does our enrollment look like and how do we make decisions based on that? But I think your team has done an amazing job taking our feedback at every single meeting and coming back. As I look at this, you heard what I said earlier, I don't feel we should have buildings over 800, 700, 650 might be. And I do, I'm in favor of the idea of this model. I do have a lot more questions. I would say this model or the first model, which has some addition at every single building and leaving the configurations as they are. The configurations that we have works really well. Kids feel a little older, they stand a little taller when they come to the intermediate school. That works really well. And so I like all of that transitioning. I'm a little concerned about the size of middle school related to keeping the 6th, 7th, and 8th. We just kind of have that, it sort of feels like your heart is just beating about they're just kind of holding on with where they are. But if you move those 6th graders, it would give more room for 7, 8. When you're talking about even the band room, then you're talking about 7th and 8th grade band, a little bit. It gives you some breathing room. Is it the right move to move 6th grade into intermediate? I'm not sure about that yet. But out of all the models, I like this one and I like the one that showed previously with all 4. Now, the only other thing I'll say, I mentioned all those things. You all know how I feel about the importance of transportation having the right place. Of course, district office needs to have a place after all these other things are done for our kids. The other thing though is that conversation about the track, the field right out here continues to be a conversation. And we may have to make tough decisions about that either way. Because we've heard that we can't just re-asphalt that again, or it's not asphalt, but whatever it is, to put the track down, it has to have all this renovation done to it, very expensive. So there's a question there about what can be done, should it be done, should we expand? I mean, those are gonna be some tough decisions coming your way, but when I look at it from an instructional standpoint, when I look at it from a cultural standpoint of what we want Gilbert to be, I think those are the two that rise to the top for me. And I also, Tyler, your words, one of our previous meetings was something about, if we're needing more classrooms, why would we make a choice about one of them losing classrooms? It's like, why would we continue to grow and add more classrooms? And to me, that really stuck with me because we are growing. So we want to make sure we're adding capacity, and those 2 models do that. So,
I would also say just about the track, without a second track, the middle school uses that as their practice facility, which is barely functional. They can't wear spikes. It's a hazard to wear spikes or whatnot. But without it, then you're looking at all those kids on the high school track, which would be a huge issue. And so in middle school would probably have to go first. High school would have to have track practice late, or we have I assume something like that. So a track is needed. That one's barely functional and probably is a hazard to a certain extent. But just getting rid of the track and not replacing it would create some pretty significant issues with that current facility.
Ballpark, what's a practice football field with a track around it?
Sure for grass.
Grass. I said, we got a grass guy.
Let's see, it's 1.5 to
For what? For a practice?
For new track and a practice field.
I was looking at some referendums and what people are doing around, and I found $1 million about 4 years ago.
Yeah. So.
Pay $1 million on resurfacing the track,
Well, if you can't service it, it sounds like.
well, rebuild it, whatever, it is,
Yeah.
whatever
That's-
the, whatever language you
That's
want to
the
put
big
with
one.
it.
You think that's for the middle school, is that?
I'm sorry.
If you just resurface it, it'd be a lot cheaper, right?
Yeah, no, we can't do that.
That's the problem.
Yeah. Can we build on that area? Is there anything underneath it?
Your floodplain cuts the back corner, but you could build up to that.
So, interest of time, maybe good, just, I think.
Go ahead and start.
Well, no. You guys. But I think it's good to provide this feedback, because as a work session, we're really at a point where you're going, well,
Which ones we not gonna?
what did you like, what did you not like? I mean, that's where you're at, right?
Yeah,
And,
we need the funnel.
and appreciate Amy and Cindy, Mike, Christine, providing feedback. Vic, Carrie, anything else? But
Mr. President, Ian is on Zoom, if you have any questions for him.
No, I haven't, if you want to jump to that, if you have anything to say, I'd say let's just get his thoughts quick too, before we listen to us blabber.
I don't
All right, can everyone hear me?
Yep, we got you, Ian.
Yep, hold on. 1 second.
You there?
All right, is that better? Can you guys hear me now?
We got you.
Okay, sorry about that. I think Mike and Cindy and Amy kind of nailed what I was gonna chime in with as far as our activities facilities. And also I do appreciate Mike saying that about the track. I know that track has issues, but we absolutely need that track for our middle school athletes, because track is one of our highest participation sports, and there are kids over there all day. And I don't think it would be feasible to have middle school practice and high school practice at the track. I just don't think that's any possibility at all, especially because the high school, you try to hustle the track practice through, because then 2 big time soccer teams are coming on right after that. And so we need that second track just for our middle school kids. And I don't know what the answer is as far as the field there, if you want to try to redo something with that, but I would advocate for having a functional track there for sure. And then, yes, as Mike and Amy and Cindy kind of nailed to our gym space. One thing I've noticed coming to Gilbert, which is great, is that we have, really close-knit community that likes to be in our buildings. And so as much as our participation levels are going up, we have kids practicing at our freshman basketball team is going to be in there at 6 a.m. this year, just because they have to be. And then our high school teams are practicing till whatever time. But then after they get done, the community comes in. And I've heard, I haven't seen this because I haven't been through a winter yet, but I've seen comments from people saying, oh yeah, the youth teams are in here till 9 o'clock at night. And so our gyms are just maxed out as it is. And I don't know what the feasibility of building a new gym is, but just to know that our gyms in our current shape and form are already maxed out with our community. And I don't know if the answer is, probably can't tell the community to go elsewhere with their teams. So we kind of have to share that space with them too. And let's think, the locker rooms too at the high school. I know Cindy touched on that, especially with girls wrestling starting now. They kind of need their own dedicated space because they're required to shower. And it's an issue with our girls basketball team and our girls wrestlers sharing a locker room, because, there'll be times when our male coaches will be in there before the game, doing their pregame stuff or at halftime, and the girls wrestlers finish practice and they need to get in and shower right away. So there's always issues there. And I can't say this is an issue that's just a Gilbert issue, because at Ankeny Centennial last year, they built that brand new school the same time Gilbert built their brand new high school, and they built 4 locker rooms for that monster student body. So it's an issue everywhere, but if we could advocate for, perfect world, more storage, more locker rooms, more gyms. And I know I'm speaking selfishly there when we're all talking about academics a lot of times, but that's kind of where I'm coming from. And appreciate all you guys. I'm sorry I wasn't there tonight. I had daddy duty, so that's going well. We're doing okay. Everyone's doing great over here. I got the baby fed and taking a nap, so I'm gonna give myself time. But I appreciate all you guys, your feedback, and excited to be a part of this process and hopefully be here for a long time and see this thing come to fruition. So appreciate all you.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Ian.
Is it a possibility to build a track and field over at the middle school?
Floodplain.
Yeah, you can have a footprint. Yeah.
I agree.
It can flood.
So you put a parking lot and then some non-conforming stuff, and that would probably fall under that.
The existing track that you have, is it deteriorating asphalt? Is that what it is?
It's a grading issue. You have to regrade the field.
Okay.
Because we had a track company come in, Mr. Pizzette, former athletic director, and I walk around with him. The grade on the field is such that the water sits on the track, and so you have to remove it.
I'm talking right.
Yeah, right here. So you have to regrade the football field first, and then you have to tear everything completely out all the way down. The sub base is bad. There's nothing, you can resurface it, there's nothing for it to adhere to.
So the timing is good.
Really?
You need to replace
It
it?
cannot be
You need to replace it.
resurfaced.
It cannot be resurfaced.
resurfaced.
And even if you did, the grade is such that the water,
Yeah.
the water flow is such that you have future issues.
Yeah.
You have to regrade the entire field.
Well, that's why when you asked what it costs, my gut's telling me that you're gonna have to retile the whole thing. And that's where a lot of the cost is, it's underground.
So this was originally a high school track, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Do middle school, do you have any events here, or is this just practice track?
You know, you can't,
If, right, because it's those like, so if you do,
you can't run in all the lanes because of gaps.
Yeah, we get it.
if you do replace the track, does it need to be?
Yeah, do you need a full track for competition?
I mean, I'm just gonna jump in quick, so we gotta get things rolling here, and we're gonna we'll go through the board's just opinions, just to kind of get things moving. On the track, my opinion is, we're done putting money into it. That's my opinion. I don't think why we spend more money. If we've got a floodplain, we put nothing else on, let's move a practice facility and a track over there. I mean, why would we put $1 million, whatever it costs on this whole thing? And on top of that, we need the land. I mean, this is really good land here, and we've got other things to do with the land. I am not for adding another building personally. I don't think we need to have 5 buildings. I think we can figure out within 4 facilities the best way to utilize our space with the kids. So how we do that, you know, I'm still early stages of trying to figure that out, but I am not for adding a 5th building by any means at all. I do think that, again, if my moving this practice facility track over to wherever, I do think we can repurpose this facility much better and figure out a better way to use this building. Because I do believe in 10 years, the gym I think is in great shape personally. Other than that, everything else is okay. And so I would think, what can we do here to get, you know, make it a better facility for the kids, the staff, everyone else. Again, the bus barn is, in my mind, is a disaster where it's at. It's in the worst possible spot in the corner. You're trying to get through here. I would like to see some sort of vision for this site to then really, we can then, obviously the elementary, I think needs a lot of help too on top of that. Obviously, we heard about the middle school and high school and some things too, but I think the majority of it, in my mind, should be spent in this facility first to get this in order, because I think this needs the most help. That's top of my brain really quickly from seeing this tonight. Josh, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, a lot of the same thoughts. You know, whether we tear this all down or part of it down or reuse it, isn't as important to me as not going to 5 buildings. I appreciate hearing, you know, you like the grade distribution the way it is. I know there may be a question of, you know, do we give you less students or more room at the middle school? And it sounds like that could go either way. But yeah, I like the idea of going heavier with the remodel on either the elementary, or the primary building. Something that didn't really talk about tonight much was childcare, childcare center, something along those lines, which is personally I'd like to see us, you know, explore that at least. And I see that being involved fairly easily in, you know, one of the either the primary or intermediate remodels. If we are gonna reuse this building for something other than regular school, it makes sense.
By childcare, do you mean like daycare, like 8 weeks
Yeah.
to school age, or
Yeah,
like
like-
before,
like
after school care and
wrap-around-
preschool?
Specifically wraparound childcare is something that's lacking right now in the community with the preschool age. That directly supports
Yeah.
the district's function, not just competing with the childcare center. Yeah, I agree with you on the track. It makes sense, you know, strike now on the track, and everybody wants one, and everybody wants to be turf. I don't know that we can make that happen, but. Yeah, I like the buildings where they are in general.
Jeff, we got.
I think your shared spaces, that you talk gyms, you talk locker rooms, those things, I think we're at the minimum now, and I don't think we can afford to take anything away. I don't think we can take the track away, the football field, you know. If we do, we gotta replace it, put it somewhere else. We have, you know, realistically, if my kid was up here anymore and had basketball at 9 o'clock, I'd be one of the parents in here lobbying for more gym space. So let's be realistic about it. If we're tight now and we're gonna grow to the number we are, so let's not take the shared spaces and just say, let's talk just, you know, classrooms. Because, you know, quite frankly, our shared spaces are probably under more of an assault than our classrooms are at this point. I will challenge, because I think the 21st century, I think it's time to change a little bit. And I would ask, you know, that you look at the kids that leave here, and, you know, a lot of them go to college and they do well, and some go to work, you know, and that's all good. But with the cost of building, it's not going to go down. And I really, really want you guys to, you know, and I talk to you guys right here. I really want you guys to think about the things I said about having 3 labs in a row, and then have your classrooms or your class, you know, offices here, and maybe have a, you know, I'm like you, I want the world history teacher to have a world history room. But I think there's some situations where we can take advantage of the labs and stuff like that. And I think because of the cost of building and everything, we have to start looking at things like that. I think we look at the auditorium, and I've talked to Christine about this a number of times, where we put 100 kids in there and we teach 100 kids, you know, at one time, like a big class. When you remember when you first went to college, you went in this room and thought, who the hell are all these people in here, you know? And you sit down there, there's 200 people in there, and you get a lecture, you know. Why can't we do that? Why can't we expose our kids to that before they get there? So those are some of the things because of the costs. I'm a fan of a new building. I'm not sure which one. I'm not sure what it looks like, but I can tell you this, as we keep growing, we need offices, we need district offices, we need a place for you guys, and I mean, you guys is like the principals to go. If you want to get out of your building, you can come. If this is a district office, come here, get a room and take a couple hours and work one-on-one with a parent, not in your building, maybe do it here. But I think we have to look at a space to make us grow long-term. As much as our shared spaces are under siege, I think our office spaces or our management spaces for Christine and her staff are hugely under siege. And so I think we got to look at that a little bit. What building? I don't know the answer to that, but I'll put it 2 ways to you. If we get rid of a building and we knock one down, we have to pay to knock it down. Okay, if we take a building like this or any of them, we're not going to do the middle school or high school. All right, we all know that. All right. So if we do with the other building, you know, you've got offices. You know, you're there. You've got an asset that you can use. And then you can move another one somewhere else with plenty of land, okay? Is it in the right spot? Maybe not. We'll work through all that, okay? But we get another building out there and we make this thing long-term the right way. You know, I don't agree with the numbers tonight from the guy. I think it's wrong. And I think we've got to do a better job of finding out really what our numbers are. I think this is all great in process. but I don't think it's very responsible from our side, because we're sitting here talking about buildings, talking about spaces and everything else, and we're not solid on numbers. This whole thing is driven by numbers. You know, we're driven by, you know, he wants to talk about open enrollment. Open enrollment's capped. You know, I can tell you how many kids we're gonna grow. Whatever that number is, space in there unless somebody moves into the area. And we can figure that out. So that's a lot. I mean, I think this is, and this is kind of fun times. You know, you guys are here at the beginning of something long-term that you can look some back and say, you know, we formed that system, you know, where there's 3,000 kids now or 4,000 kids, because they're coming. Okay, so, you know, we can do what we want, but I think that's our process. And it's the 21st century. We're paying $400 a square foot for stuff. You know, we got to look at different ways of doing it. So.
And real quick, Tyler, before you go, I also want to, I mean, rumors across communities like this fly all the time, and now we're going to do elementary school. Obviously, in an ideal world, I think we would do that, but again, we have a cost barrier here.
Yeah.
We could build an elementary school that we wouldn't be able to do anything else.
Right.
And so, again, 5 years ago, with our budget of $30 million roughly, we could have done that and built other things. It doesn't work today on those costs. So I say that more people in this room understand that, but I want people to understand it's not, we hear that, we know, oh yeah, we do elementary. Again, if dollars weren't an option, of course we could do that. But we have a budget constraint here. We have other issues to take care of as well that are just as important. So I just want to throw that out there, mostly for the people watching or whatever else, but we know, we hear it, but we've got a budget, so. Sorry.
Yeah, the interview, we were talking.
Elementary school, oh, I hear it all the time.
No, I think that's a good place to start, because, so this will be the 4th building project in my short tenure.
God, you're old.
And it's interesting, and I really appreciate, I appreciate everybody's input. This is really good to have a work session. But it actually, I do appreciate the feedback from the admin team, but I'm sitting here going, wow, we didn't do a very good job on the high school. Wow. I mean, it was less than 10 years ago when we planned that athletic, right? And we thought, look how big this is. So my point with that is this: let's take the time we need right now to make sure we plan really well. And we got to plan long-term. And I agree with the comment. I do think we're at a point where we need to put a new footprint in. I don't personally agree with the 5 building concept. So I'm kind of like Jeff, I'm not the one sitting here. I'm not the smart one that knows where that's supposed to go. But I'd much rather us invest in that than put a lot more money into maintenance and upkeep, right? I mean, that $9 million for this building, it just started to hit you. You go, what else do you get? Well, you get to exist for a longer time. Well, if we can really do 14 or 15 million and get a new building, whatever that looks like, well, that makes more sense, right? Now, having said that, I'm also sitting here going, well, but that doesn't mean that we necessarily tear stuff down. Because, I mean, classrooms and space, especially the common space, that's going to be tremendously valuable to our district. So it's almost like, how do we grow, maybe reconfigure, and let's make sure we put the new dollars to new rather than old to the extent that we can. If I look back at this last project we did, the 2016, 2017, it was across all the buildings as well. And I think that was the right thing to do. I don't think that would be the right thing to do now, because it feels like it would just be kicking the can down the road. And we have, as you just pointed out, limited money, right? So it's plan long-term. No, we've got limited money. The longer we go, the more resources we'll have. So that doesn't mean we have to spend all 34 million right now. If we only spent 25 million, then that'll grow, and then there'll be another opportunity 10 years from now. And you know, who knows where inflation's going to be. So a year ago, I really think this is the right thing to be doing. I don't know if we have to be in a hurry. I think we need to focus more on being right than being in a hurry right now. And I'll just weigh in on the track over there. I think it can go. I think it's the perfect timing because we could have invested a bunch of money in it 5 years ago. We chose not to. It's like Mike, like you said, it's right that's passed. So if there's a better place for it and that space can be used, I don't think anything's sacred. So plan well, how's that?
Just gonna throw out a wild, crazy idea just because I can. You know, gym space, community space, we hear that a lot. I challenge not just the school, but the community in general to figure that out, not put it all back on the school's shoulders. You know, how can we get a private, a public, kind of figure it out? We all need this, we're all using it. This isn't just the school, this is the city of Gilbert, this is the parents, this is, how do we go and do that? Where, yes, we can help with that, or we can, whether it be through land, whether it be through some additional costs or whatever, but we don't take the full burden of it all either. I know other communities have done that. I think there's ways to do it, and I think a community would support it. But we need someone to kind of be the visionary behind it and kind of go out and do it. So, I mean, again, yeah, we need gym space, but I think that's bigger than that. It's not just our burden to get that. I think we can do that as a community and do a better job of raising the funds. So.
I do think people would be surprised, maybe not because they're here so often. It surprises me how often the gym is just, it's 9 o'clock, it's both ends, it's the middle stuff. I mean, we are utilizing those gyms. And so it's true, to bring all of the community in, to say what other ways are there to help us create a gym, a tennis space, whatever the things are that go with it, that would be wonderful. So.
The last thing I'll mention, sorry, I think we all kind of mentioned that, you know, I think we're all in favor, we don't want more buildings, additional buildings. I think we all agree 4 buildings. I will also say, I'm not a big fan of shift grades either, if it's gonna cost us more money. I mean, I just don't see why, we're gonna shift from 6 to here and all that, but yet it's gonna cost us more to reconfigure. I'm not behind that personally. You know, I'm okay if we can figure out how to repurpose the way it is with the grade split how it's set up, that makes more sense to me than just to show we're gonna shift from 6 to here, and in order to do that, we gotta do some other stuff here. I get the middle school issues, and I agree, Mike, we gotta figure something out there, from cafeteria space to additional space, but I really like the 6, 7, 8 setup personally, so.
Andrew, can you show that the first slide? I think it's that one.
Like some of the reasons we keep having
Existing or
shifting
the first
things is because we assume that we
The
couldn't
one
do
that
it
has
at
the
the middle school, and we should find out if that's true.
So this is deferred maintenance items, I think we can look at it a little more closely too, and say, is that the really immediate need versus a 10-year? Because there's some things like, the middle school where we're looking at new mechanical systems. So 15 years old, we're going to need a new mechanical system. Or do we need-
Is that just copy paste from the developer?
It is.
We took
And
their
some of that,
costs
I
from
think,
that.
is-
What's encouraging, because I could scrape a lot of that stuff.
Well, that's kind of what I think.
Right? So you cover all the de novo items, there's a plan in place. We're
Correct.
2, 3 through 5,
Yeah.
I think.
We've budgeted out what that looks like. I mean, the great example I always like to use, because Gail's, she was on it long before I arrived, was the replacing the turf at the football field. You know, she budgets for that every single year. So that when we get there, we'll be ready. But it's those types of things that, you know, Gino laid that out for us, and Gail put it into a spreadsheet for us that we have that really shows where those projects, so we can make sure we share that, you know, as well as part of this. So you
And some of those items can come off if something does get done to one of the buildings. So you may recoup some of that and can get other things done quicker or take on less debt to do that project. So what Joe had said at the beginning, this is very high level. We can get into minutia as we funnel.
So Andrew, would you want the group to go back through the 5 choices, or do you feel like you have what you need related to?
Are we gonna get a copy of this? I want a copy.
I figured you would.
Top secret.
Yeah, I don't think we need to go through the 5 choices again.
No, I think
you guys
from
have a
what you
feel.
guys did, we can refine based on what we heard today to
Yep.
be able to have that next.
Yeah.
I think the
in-depth
biggest
version.
thing that you have not accounted for is what we've heard from Cindy and Ian, as far as athletic.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
isn't in any of our.
Well, and something to help out a little, I noticed in a couple of these places, auditorium or new theater are mentioned, that's, we can't build on the auditorium we have as far as I understand. It's because, I don't know that that's a need, so if something goes off.
Yeah, but that's where that came from, community, that came
Okay.
from all the meetings, so that's something that was brought forward in those other meetings.
There's a lot of different things that came
So one
together.
suggestion there is that let's start screening that out, because that does kind of distract.
Right.
So for example, on that auditorium, it's my understanding that new schools in the Des Moines area are building that big, even though they're even bigger than us, going, well, that's the size.
Yeah.
So let's not kid ourselves that we're gonna build another new auditorium.
Mhm.
We're not.
But let's be realistic that it's not okay to not have all the band kids together in junior high. That's a serious problem. That's a problem last week, and it's a problem going to be a problem next week. I don't think that's okay. And I apologize.
Byron Tinder for all that. In a
It was
good
such a
way.
Good program. That's
Totally.
right. That's right.
That's a good problem.
Do you want me to talk about the enrollment opportunity?
Yeah, why don't you go through that, Christine? I know we've got
Well, just kind of, well, it goes to Tyler's comment about let's, slow down, let's, get it right. So I think I've shared this with most everyone, but in my conversations with other superintendents, I talked to them about who and how are they getting information related to enrollment? And that's where if you go to Dropbox, I contacted this company out of Kansas City, RSP, and what I found out in working with them and just talking to them about what is it you do, this is what they do is enrollment for school districts. That's their business. And they've worked with many districts in Iowa and shared that information and looked at all different ways to come up with those numbers. I had one superintendent, the superintendent of Norwalk, tell me they used to use them every other year. Now they use them every year and every year. And of course, Norwalk's a big growing district. They get between 1 and 5 of accuracy of how many students they're going to get. So they all spoke very, very highly of this group. The other interesting part, I thought, is that RSP actually put in, when we put in for the RFP, and CMBA was selected, this group was embedded into one of the other vendors' proposals as an add-on, if you will. So they were very familiar with what we were asking and what we were expecting around enrollment. So what they did is they went back and pulled their proposal back out. You can see what they talk about there is looking at enrollment, much like we've been talking about what the projections are. And the other thing in your Dropbox, if you look at it, is they just did this for the Ames School District last spring. So a lot of our data, they would also have, they'd be able to, there's some crossover there. They said that they would be able to look at. But if you go to the Dropbox that has all of the information from the Ames report, I just put that in there so you can see, it's graph and map after map after map related to projected enrollment. And like I said, other districts have utilized them. They use them as their planning year to year. And they did say they don't like to, our original proposal said 3-year projection. They like to start at 5 because they feel like by the time we finish, the 3 years, it's not gonna take you 3 years to do it, but we're not looking long enough for their work. So they like to do 5 and then 10. They will go to 20, but they don't like to because the further out you go, the less accurate you are, is what they shared with me. So I wanted you to have that as an option. What they said timeline, it takes a little bit of time because they do have other clients. It would probably, if it was something that you thought we wanted to move forward in, you can see the cost analysis is there. It is probably February or March before we would have any numbers from them. Now maybe I could work with them to try to get that even sooner, but that is what they shared with us. And I was very, very impressed with the information and the data that they provided. Pieces of it we've seen from the work that the CMBA is doing, pieces with what John's doing. It's just another opportunity for us to take a closer look and say, how accurate are we on the numbers as we look to the future? And I mean, I just feel like we've got to get that right. And that's my opinion, but I'm open to what
But
your
we're getting ready to
questions
spend
are.
$33 million conceivably,
Right.
you know, and I think this, like you and I talked, this falls under your realm. You know, we got the okay from us, you and the motion to, you got the spending authority to do it.
I do, but I wanted.
Yeah, no, I agree, but I think we should do this.
It'd be nice to have it
Yeah.
in 2 weeks.
I know.
And that's another thing I want to say is, we're not bleeding at the seams, like Tyler said. You know, we're not suffocated by anything going on in the stores, the schools, okay? So, I mean, if we take our time and really, which I want to do, really do a nice job, and this goes out months, I'm okay with that. And so I think from your standpoint of having numbers back by March, I think that's fine. I don't think we're getting beat up by anything going on in the schools. I think we should be proud of ourselves for starting the whole process when we did.
I read through their Ames projections. It was a high quality report. I like that a firm from Kansas used the Ames 2040 plan, that they're, figured that out, because that's where I was looking for a lot of this planning. If they're not using that, they should be. So, yeah, seems like a good value for what you get. Now, again, get it before March, that'd be ideal. It'd be worth talking to them to see.
Well, and that was before I realized that they had the Ames report, so I feel like a follow-up phone call will be that. I'll be talking to them about, well, you already have some of this, push us up a little.
It's an important piece of this whole puzzle. I mean, and again, what we learned tonight, I don't think that's correct. So I'm all in favor of it. So.
Yeah, I support it, and I'd say that, yeah, it's harder to project the longer you go out, but the longer we go out, the better.
Yeah.
For this district, I think that's really important. And then the other part would be come back to CMBA and kind of reorienting, well, what do we think our timelines
Let's
are,
get you those numbers out of the way.
right? And if we need to reassess what our plans are with you, then we should be open to that, because if we do this, I think we want to use this rather than go, okay, that proves what we already decided.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it definitely changes our timeline, spring to not spring. At least talking about it.
Yeah, so I think we need to be open to what your recommendations are for what that looks like for your planning process too. But I think we're in full agreement. We gotta have something to stand on.
Yeah,
Have you guys, you've heard of this,
We've heard of it.
obviously. All right. Anything else?
We answer all your questions.
I have homes to do. No.
I know, I bet you did.
Real quick calendar, again, our board meeting is now Monday the 10th, so just note that, October 10th here, this coming Monday is our next board meeting. And after that, we'll have November 14th, will be the following regular board meeting.
17.
No, I texted you. 10, we're changing it, it's 10 now. It's Monday. That's why I'm, write it down.
I'm not gonna be here, I apologize.
And the 14th is actually gonna be the high school LMC.
Okay, at the 14th, for November 14th, that'll be at the high school. But our regular board meeting is Monday right here. Coming Monday.
Okay.
All right, now,
Move to adjourn.
we have a second.
Don't do it.
Second.
Don't do it.
Okay.
All those in favor?
You guys are good. It's only 6:55.
All those in favor?
Aye,
Yeah,
aye,
it's a
aye.
seven.
Opposed?
6:00.
Meeting adjourned.
Nice work.
TMBA, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, hey,
Admin team, thank you guys.
Thanks, everybody.
thanks to you guys too.